Hey everybody, it is Wintermute coming to you from the think tank, and we're going to talk about Italy and its tech options in version 4. So, the first thing we need to start off with is the elephant in the room, which is that the Italian tech program sucks. You start off with one die, with one major factory, and that's probably all you're going to do all game. It is perfectly, doable for Italy to build another major factory if they want. But that's a huge investment of resources, and they don't have a ton of them. So I've never tried it. I am curious if anybody else has ever gone for that and felt like it was really worth the investment. But generally speaking, I'm going to talk from a position of they're only ever going to have one tech die. So, yeah. Now, let's jump right into the first tech advanced mech. And you know what? We're just going to talk about advanced artillery at the same time because they're both straight unit upgrades. Which one is better for Italy if they can only pick one? I think advanced artillery is. And part of the reason is while advanced mech has great stats, they have that movement of two, but a lot of the area that Italy is going to be moving through and fighting in is mountainous or desert. So, how often are they going to really be able to take advantage of that extra movement? Now, they may want that defensive five in certain spots. Sure, absolutely, that makes sense. But I think you're just as well to um, just go for the advanced artillery and get that better first strike on the offense or defense because you're only going to be able to move one anyway most of the time, and at least you've got that first strike. But some of that's going to boil down to a matter of preference. So you know how you play, you know how you like to play. Italy also gets into a position where it can be very standoffish here in North Africa and or down here in South or East Africa, and maybe if you can get a couple of advanced artillery down there, you can take advantage of their attrition rolls. That's attrition rolls for advanced artillery is not anything I ever plan on using. If I get it, great. If I don't, but it's not. I don't ever go for advanced artillery for those attrition rolls. I just think it's very likely they end up in positions where attrition rolls will be could be at a higher rate of usage, higher value out of them than some other fronts because they tend to be standoffish with units here in Egypt and or in East Africa. But then you got to actually have them have the advanced artillery and get them there. So there's a lot of big what ifs there. But I still think if you wanted to go for just a straight unit upgrade, I think advanced artillery is probably your best bet. Radar. So radar is not a high priority for Italy, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have merit. So bases and major naval facilities being able to scramble. Now Italy has a big navy, and being able to scramble that entire navy out when it needs it or wants it to be able to hit the enemy hard. There's absolutely merit to that. Now I haven't played Italy enough to really say, hey, we're going to use this a lot. Um, So I'm a little bit up in the air about whether that, and maybe it becomes imperative over time. The more you play them, you realize just how useful that ability would be. So maybe radar moves to a top tier if that's your desire, if that's your goal. But right now I wouldn't put that at a top tier. And the improvement to your interception rating. Now, it is not beyond the realm of possibility that this major factory in northern Italy gets targeted at some point by a strategic bombing raids. And you want to put fighters there to help interception. And strategic bombing raids against Italy are far more damaging than they are against Germany because Italy just doesn't have a big economy in a lot of games. So any damage done to their factories hurts all that much more. But again, not a top tier reason to take it. And I don't. I It's possible Italy can be targeted by strategic rockets, but I think the effort of building them and moving them down to a position to actually pull it off is logistically a pain in the butt and probably isn't worth it. So being able to shoot at them again, not a high priority. And I already don't weigh heavy shipbuilding as a high priority for them, so I don't rate that one very high. And I would probably build a battleship before I would build a heavy carrier, a heavy battleship before we build a heavy carrier. Anyway, we'll get to that. And the battle cruiser, who knows? ASW, probably not a high priority. They only have one convoy worth $1. That's it. You're probably not even going to be putting your guys on convoy duty, if ever, if at all, just because you've got other things to worry about in this area. Now, it is possible there are some British subs out and about doing things, and you may want to, but is it really worth rolling for this just to protect $1 a turn? Probably not. Um, and seaplanes, getting her attack bonus. Yeah, if you really need to go sub hunting as Italy, sure. But again, there are better techs than this. I feel improved factories. Um, I don't consider this a high priority, but again, if you are getting bombed, maybe it's nice to have this for that cushion. On the other hand, uh, you know, Italy doesn't really have a ton of money, and they do have options of building colonial units and things like that. So, are you ever going to be at a point where you just are going to drop 5 units at that major factory in a single turn? Yeah, it is possible, and I'm sure it does happen. Where Italy's like, man, I wish I had 8 units, because that's all my money I need to put into just building infantry this turn. Okay, well, yeah, but the likelihood of that I don't think is very high, even though it could happen. So I don't rate improved factories very high for them. Now, you might feel differently if you actually go out of your way to build a factory for Italy elsewhere on the map, to be able to reinforce certain areas. And maybe this gets bumped up because you really do want to be able to put out 2 units a turn at that factory. So, some of that would depend on your playstyle. Improved construction. Okay, now this one I think is worth it for Italy. Absolutely worth it. I think that there is absolutely reasons Italy wants to build facilities. I think building a sub base, I think it's worth it for them to build a sub base or two around the Med. I'm not going to go into a detailed explanation of where that would be, but I think there are reasons for them to want to build some sub bases around the Med in various spots. I think there are reasons for them to possibly build air bases in certain areas, particularly North Africa. I think there are reasons for them to possibly build fortifications at various points on the map, if need be. So I think that the discount to facilities could be very useful to Italy. Um, Additionally, the discount to naval units could also be very beneficial to Italy. And Italy, while it doesn't have, yeah, Italy's got to do a kind of a balancing act because they start off with this big, beautiful navy, but it's very fragile. Any damage done to it is cost them quite a bit to replace, and they don't do it quickly because they don't have a big economy. And improved construction helps them rebuild and or beef up that navy when the time comes to actually pull the trigger and do something with it. So I think improved construction is a top tier, but it also depends on what your play style is. It heavily depends on what your play style is with Italy. And you may play a very passive Italy that may look at improved construction and go, yeah, it's not worth it. I'm not going to really be going to war until much later in the game. And I don't really need improved construction because of that. And that's fine. That's fine. Or you're somebody who doesn't feel you need to build a lot of facilities, and that's fine. And then being able to just build stuff quicker. Yeah, there's no nation that would not be happy with that. Where Italy is backpedaling and they realize, hey, we just got to spend $10 to build a fortified line right here. Yeah, I get that. So that's always a useful ability to pretty much any nation. So, and it does help protect. And where I say that improved factories can kind of maybe help against strategic bombing, equally so can improved construction. So I would definitely go for improved construction before I would go for improved factories in most cases. But yeah, improved construction I think is very useful for Italy. Airborne doctrine. Okay, the game that I'm actually in right now on this map, and it's not fully updated, so is absolutely um, my airborne unit. I did build a air transport, and I've kept building some airborne to be able to always have an airborne to be able for it to use, and it has been the absolute all star of this game. And I mean, it has, taken Transjordan, liberated Iraq for the Italian cause. I took the French capital down here in Cameroon, free French capital down here in Cameroon, and then I came over to the Gold Coast and ate up an American seaplane, and this guy's just been bouncing all over the place, just tearing up the backfield, really harassing the hell out of the Allies. And he's been a real all-star. And I really, because of that, I really am excited to play Italy with an airborne doctrine in the future. I think that this is a perfectly good, great choice for them. Again, it's going to depend on your play style, but I would like to see airborne doctrine for Italy and try that out full bore in a future game. By the time I realized how useful it could be in this game, it's already, the time for me to start rolling for it has well passed. Italy hasn't gotten a single tech this entire game, and I've rolled for the same tech every turn, long range aircraft. We're about three turns from rolling for the end of game at this point, and I still have not a single technology for Italy, and like I was saying before, their tech program sucks. But in future games, I'm going to go for airborne doctrine as the Italian player. It's the amphibious doctrine. So there is absolutely an argument for amphibious doctrine for Italy. But again, a lot of it depends on your play style. Um, because it doesn't amphibious doctrine doesn't have much use if you play if your Italian game has been one where your fleet gets destroyed from underneath you and any transport you drop is going to die as soon as it hits the water. Now, assuming it's going to be in port, but as soon as it leaves port, it's going to have problems. Um, Now you can build transports and import, go take a territory with a major port, and then go import there. So you can kind of leapfrog around like that. But as soon as the Commonwealth player or the Free French player realizes what you're doing, they're going to send some surface ships out there to keep you pinned in. So it's kind of taking amphibious doctrine is very dependent on how you play with your Italian navy. And there's also a strong possibility, or well, not say strong. There's a possibility if your navy gets destroyed out from underneath you, which happened to me in this game. Suddenly, you're sitting there with amphibious doctrine, but no practical way to use it. So that's one thing I would take into consideration with amphibious doctrine. But I think it is a viable choice for Italy, depending on what your long-term game plan is. So heavy armor. I don't think this one's worth it for Italy. For it's yeah, okay. Again, there's an argument about okay, I only have a limited number of transports. I want each transport I do build to be able to really pack some punch when it goes into landing. And yeah, okay, heavy armor can do that for you. But rarely are you going to be able to take advantage of its blitzing capabilities because of all the mountain and desert you have to fight through. Um, Now, I will say this about this heavy armor, though. Maybe Italy is and advanced mech, which I did not bring up before. If you're if your Italian strategy is to help Germany go after Russia, well, maybe these two technologies become a higher priority because you want to build quality troops that really pack a punch. So, yeah, I could see that. But in general, I personally don't weight heavy armor very much. I don't weight it very high for Italy for the same reasons I don't weight advanced mechanized very high. Jet fighters, a perfectly viable choice for Italy. However, they come with a real steep price tag. And this is the one reason I just don't ever roll for it for them. I think they're better off overall going for techs that are going to be easier for them to get because they only have one die. I think if you start rolling for anything at 8 or higher, you're taking a much greater chance that you're just never going to see the tech hit in the game. I mean, like I said, I still have no tech in this game, and we're entering the late game, and I still have no tech. Now, maybe you're luckier than me, but that's just the reality of the situation. And then to get it, it's got a high price tag. Long range aircraft, this one is a good choice for Italy. Now, it is an 8, but once you get it, you get it. Everything just immediately gets upgraded. And and a lot of why you want this is just the extra movement. It just lets you reach out and touch people all that much better. It lets you reinforce your combats down here in North Africa and then reposition them back up here in, let's say, Corsica, where you want them to be against the British coming in or whatever the case is. Long range aircraft is a really good choice for Italy, And they do start off with at least two fighters. They start off with two fighters and an attack aircraft. So even if you just have those left, that alone, I think, makes this still very useful. Let alone if you actually build other planes, like I built the air transport, and that would be even better if I could get it to move farther. If I could ever get my tech dice to actually roll well for me. But I do have a beefed up airport, or yeah, a beefed up airport, beefed up air units is what I meant to say for Italy. I built more than what they start with. Now I have lost some, but long range aircraft is what I've been going for, and I think it's a good choice just because it opens up a lot more possibility, especially if you are playing with paratroopers. You want the ability to kind of have even more options on where you drop them. So yeah, I put that top tier for them. Advanced subs, not top tier, but it's not a terrible tech for Italy. You actually, as the Italian player, have, and in this game in particular, the Italians have actually taken over all the submarine raiding that the Germans would have otherwise done, and they've been absolutely killing the British economy with it. I mean, they've just been rolling great. And in hindsight, had I and again, this is your play style. There is, a viable argument to be said where Italy is going to, German subs are going to slowly get whittled away and sunk. But if Italy builds a couple more additional subs before they go to war, and they go after advanced subs, and they sort of take over the convoy raiding, as soon as the Germans sort of die down, their ability to do it dies down, I think you can do a lot of damage with the Italians and put a lot of pressure on the British Navy, and always have the fallback of just using the units to attack the British Navy if the time comes. So I'm not going to put it on the top tier, but I'm not going to completely rule it out as a possibility as an Italian player who maybe wants to go after advanced subs and just really leverage the advantage of doing all that much more damage against the British convoy lines and having more powerful first striking, naval units at their disposal in the later game. So yeah, not a I don't think it's a terrible choice. I think there's some merit to it. So I don't like large ship construction for Italy. Too expensive, and you're going to get it too late in the game to have any major impact. And out of the two, if I did decide to go for it, I would probably go for a heavy battleship over a heavy fleet carrier if I wanted to put a unit or two of that on the board, because they're just tougher. They're just tougher around. At least the fleet carriers, you've got to build the planes to go on them, so battleships are a little more straightforward. Um, but if you're an Italian player who's going to go to war much later in the game, and you really want when you do go to war, you really want at least one heavy battleship to back you up. That could be a huge game changer in the way some of those combats work out, without a doubt. So I'm not saying it's not without merit. And if you do go this route, there is a way to use it effectively, but it's not something I personally would go for very often. Though, and again, never say never. Maybe I'll feel different in a couple months. Heavy strat bombers, just kind of like the fighters, they're just too expensive. And I think that if you do want to damage facilities as Italy, you're better off going with the cheaper. I think even compared to strategic bombers, the cheaper medium bombers are going to do just as well. You know, they're going to have a movement of 6 if they're taking off from an air base. They still have decent reach. 7 if you get long range aircraft. Um, and not only do they have the ability to damage certain facilities that are worth damaging at times for the British, against the British in this area, and possibly the Free French, but then they can be used in actual naval combat when you're going on the offensive. So I think medium bombers overall for Italy are a better choice over strategic bombers, and then even more so over heavy strategic bombers. And it's a hard tech to get. So I don't see much value in taking heavy strategic bombers as Italy, personally. Strategic rockets. Now I really looked at the map before I started this video, and I counted out spaces, and it's like, okay, if you really want to go for strategic rockets, you could position them down here in Sicily, and hit Gibraltar, hit pretty much all of North Africa up into the Middle East, in terms of being able to damage facilities. Now, at this point, I think it's even more important to think about them in terms of not doing a lot of damage. Instead, you're looking for to, okay, I really want to damage this facility because I want to deny him the bonus of this facility. And I think that's generally how I look at strategic rockets. But are they a good choice for Italy? Probably not. I think just build a medium bomber or two. Yeah, they're a little more risky because of the flak, but I think you're better off going with a medium bomber or two over wasting your time rolling for strategic rockets. Improve logistics. So let's break this down. Double strategic rail movement in all regions. So an 8 strategic rail movement in Europe actually could be very useful if you're an Italian player who is helping Germany and Russia, without a doubt. That getting even more units over their return might be absolutely vital. On the other hand, using Italian units to help reinforce France from a D-Day invasion, having now you can still send 4 guys off to Russia, 4 guys up here to help defend France. So yeah, okay, there's a use. North Africa. Now, Italy has like, well, they actually, oh, with the exception of Tobruk, they have no other rail in North Africa. Now, this isn't the final map, so that might be different in the final map. Um, so even if they doubled their rail capacity in North Africa, they need to spend money to connect all these rail lines. And you can see, I actually own most of from most of North Africa. I actually did have Morocco at one point, but is it worth it to have double rail? Well, it could be useful. Is it worth it to have that double rail and then have to pay for to build all these railroads? Okay, I could see an argument for it, but I don't really think it's that big of a deal. And you only have that one rail down in Abyssinia from there to French Somaliland. So again, you would have to now if Italy does manage to take huge chunks of Central Africa, maybe they really do want to connect these rail lines and start using them to shuffle units around, and they really want that double capacity. Okay, sure. Is it worth rolling for that 9? Probably not. Um, Now, being able to strategic rail across different rail gauges, now, yeah, that might absolutely be worth it if you are helping out Germany with Russia. That might be important. I will give it that. +1 strat naval movement. Well, Italy's strategic rail movement is only a 2, meaning it's a transport and one other unit. So at least that gets you up to the breaking point of 3. So a naval unit and two naval transport and 2 units on it, which is the breaking point anyway. That's the but it can only carry that. Um, but are you really going to be spending a lot of time shuffling units to various theaters where that might be important? I guess it could happen. I just don't really think it's worth it to go after improved logistics for that. And moving factories in the home country. Okay, maybe you want to move your major factory from northern Italy down to Mezzagarino. I, I'm sure I did not pronounce that right. Down here, so that you can build units here, and then you can immediately use your transports here from C Zone 51 to kind of move them around to where they need to go. Okay, yeah, saving that one extra movement from going from here to here might actually be important, depending on the breaking points of your movement ratings and whatnot. I'll say that's a possibility. Maybe you want to move it to Rome because you are all hands on deck, worried about invasion, and you want to be able to just drop your units straight into Rome rather than having to have them lag a turn behind in northern Italy. Okay, um, but beyond that, those are your only 4 choices. And so I don't see that as being a high priority. And you're probably not going to build another factory anywhere in Italy that you would want to move around. I guess it's possible, but I don't really see that happening either. So I don't really see improved logistics as being a top tier decision for Italy. Um, so yeah, that's how I feel about Italian tech, which is to say, it kind of they're kind of in a crappy spot. Uh, you know, their their tech program is really. I mean, they're already kind of in a difficult position because there's a lot they want to do, but it's difficult for them to get it done. One thing I did forget to mention, and I believe this is worth mentioning, is one of their victory objective for taking Crete and Cyprus and Malta and all of Greece is that they start getting a transport, an air transport, in addition to a seaplane, that if it's destroyed, it can be rebuilt for free. That actually plays into an argument for airborne doctrine and long range aircraft as being the two top tier techs for Italy. So, depending on your play style, if you're very naval focused, I think that improved construction is a great choice. If you're more air doctrine, then I think airborne doctrine, along with long range aircraft, might be the better choice. And of course, there's still a lot of argument there. And Italy's in this weird position the entire game of. There's so many variables involved in Italy that it is it can be a frustratingly fun nation to play sometimes because there's a lot. And even the area that the way they are located in the order of the turn order makes them frustratingly fun to play at times too, because they can be a spoiler, but they also have to wait until go after Britain does stuff and Free France does stuff. So that may ruin their entire game plan because they just watched everything change on the board before they take their turn. And yeah, just to compound that, you've got a really crappy tech program. So you cannot rely on ever getting a tech. Germany can pretty much rely on getting tech. Russia, the U.S., even Britain can rely on getting tech at some point. It's just a matter of when it gets it. Italy, you may go the entire game and never get any tech because you just roll bad turn after turn after turn, and it sucks. But there it is. But anyway, that's kind of how I feel about Italian techs right now. So let me know below. I put out a couple hypotheticals there, and I'm curious to see some feedback from people who've maybe experimented with, like I said, with building a second major factory for Italy, or utilizing some of these techs in ways that I hadn't foreseen or thought of, um, and kind of going from there. I would like to hear some comments if of people who have any experience with that. So for right now, this is Wintermute signing off from the think tank. I will see you for the U.S. next video.